The fact that the lockdown has already damaged the Indian economy is evident in the plight of small business, rising unemployment level, and abysmal stock market performance. And to forestall the damage, the central government has announced a rupees 1.7 lakh crore stimulus package, a promise to spend close to 1% of the country's economy. Unfortunately, there's always unanimous consensus that the 1.7 lakh crore isn't nearly enough. So it's time to think outside the box. And on Monday, a cabinet chaired by Prime Minister Modi decided to cut salaries of all ministers, including himself, by 30% of a whole year. The President, Vice President, and Governor have also agreed to take this cut. All the salary savings will go into the Consolidated Fund of India, which includes the government's revenue generated through taxes, sale of assets, earning from public sector companies, etc. And since the government bears most of its expenditure from resources mobilized through its consolidated fund, it's safe to say that the salary cut is laudable move, even though it's a largely symbolic endeavor. But the government also simultaneously decided to suspend the MP-led fund for 2 years, and not many people seem to like it. Why? Well, to answer this, we need some more context. So the MP-led scheme began in December 1993 by the former Prime Minister Nasima Ram spearheaded an initiative to offer MP the power to execute a local project like building roads, drinking water facilities, primary education system, etc., in order to meet the needs of their constituency. Under this scheme, each MP is entitled to 5 crore per annum, and they can redirect resources based on their discretion. With 543 MPs in Lok Sabha and 245 in Rajya Sabha, the MP-led fund for the 2 years was suspended will amount to 7,900 crore money, which will go into government's consolidated fund right now. And the government's rationale for scrapping MPLAT here is simple. The country's finances are shambles. We are borrowing way too much money. We don't know how long the lockdown will last. Tax revenue will take a hit, and we need every penny that we can get. One could even argue that funds in the MPLAT scheme are often misappropriated by greedy politicians and corrupt businessmen. So redirecting these funds to the centralized authority ought to do us a great good, right? Let's say the virus takes Mumbai by storm, then the center will have to step in and allocate disproportionate resources to the region. It wouldn't be possible with a few MP and 5 crores, so you might as well pull all the money and redirect the fund to where it's needed the most. But then the MPs are not happy about this. In fact, Thiruvananthapuram MP Shashi Tharoor spoke about out loud against the move in his Twitter handle. According to him, MP-led is the only way for an MP to direct development resources to his constituency. He spoke about how he uses his fund to source the much needed test and PPE kits for Thiruvananthapuram health workers. But now, with the money going into the consolidated fund, he claims he won't be able to do as much, and that many not bode well for states and local areas either. To illustrate this point, Tharoor said, to take one example, the center allocates 157 crore rupees for disaster response mitigation fund to Kerala, which has 314 COVID-19 cases, while Gujarat has only 122 cases and gets 662 crores. Will the kind of imbalance also affect the reallocation of MPLADS funds? Well, it's certainly possible. Take state finances for instance. You see the center collects a bulk of nation's tax revenue. However, state undertake most of the expenditure on education, health, law and order. To plug this mismatch, the center transfers a part of the taxes to the state and union territories. Now they redistribute this revenue in a way that ensures all states have enough to spend. And to do this, the Finance Commission employs a complicated formula to decide which state deserves how much money. This parameter includes population size, land area, differences, etc. But as you can imagine, it's not an exact science. For instance, the 14th Finance Commission decided to use the 2011 population census instead of 1971 data, gave rise to much controversy. Now I know what you are thinking. Why on the earth would there be a controversy over a move that seemed perfectly legitimate at first sight? Well, the problem is several South Indian states argued that the population growth rate has declined since between 1971 and 2000 due to the investment in education and health scheme. And so they contest that the only reason they are receiving less money from the center is because they did what they were supposed to do. How is that fair? So the argument here is that using the MPLAT scheme to finance the consolidated fund will probably bring much disparities to the forefront again. But it's possible. It doesn't matter whether you agree with this or not, because the bottom line in this is that while there's one camp suggesting that suspending the MPLAD scheme is condescension to the cause right now, there is another camp suggesting that it's best to leave MPs manage the fund themselves. And while it might be very hard to say for sure who is right at this point, here's hoping the fund are deployed into productive avenues either way. Until then.